Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
This week, we start a whole new book of the Torah called Vayikra, which is why the first word out of my mouth was Vayikra, and he called, and God called. So, if you would like to know what is said in this week's Torah portion, you have an excellent place from which you can read it. This is all from the Reform website. And because Purim is coming, we're going to talk about that instead. But if you'd like to read about Vayikra, you can bring the handout home and you can read all about it. So, Purim is coming, and we are going to do a little refresher. So, I'm going to put you guys on the spot, and I'm going to ask you about Purim. For instance, does anyone know where and even when this story may have allegedly taken place?
During the Babylon.
In Babylon. Okay. And anybody remember the name of the capital city of Persia at that time?
Shushan.
Thank you, Richard. I can always count on you. Shushan. Yes. And do we think that, well, first of all, we're going to talk about some characters, okay? So here we are, we're in Shushan, the capital of Persia, which was overseeing at that time 120 different principalities over Persia and Media. And who might have been ruling during that time?
Ahasuerus.
Yes, King Ahasuerus or Ahashverosh, or just a sneeze, we don't know. Thank you for that, Dylan. And King Ahasuerus was reigning. It was within the third year of his reign that this story takes place. Of course, Bible scholars and traditional sources from Judaism tend to date it around the 4th century BCE, give or take, 100 years or so. But I want to get into now more characters, okay? So we have King Ahasuerus, who may or may not have been King Xerxes, or King Artaxerxes IV, or King the First, or King Artaxerxes II, depending on how you talk. We're just going to keep with Ahasuerus, or King Ahasuerus. So who else are the main characters of Purim? Just shout it out. Mordecai, Queen Esther, Haman, Vashti. Yeah. Am I missing anybody? Not major character. Are we missing any major character? What'd you say?
Haman's wife.
Haman's wife, true. Haman's wife does make a little cameo in the actual book of Esther.
Well, all of his sons as well.
All of
Their
it,
wives.
well, just to be
Just their
murdered.
heads.
They just show up to be murdered, all 10 of them. At
Just
their
their
funeral.
heads.
What?
Just their heads.
Just their heads are murdered?
Or show
They
up.
suck on pillars.
This is very exciting. Okay, yeah.
Remember the good
It's a very violent book. Okay, so the next thing that I want to ask you is to take us, as a refresher, through the story. Okay? So I might just attack call on people to follow, and it'll be like a little follow. So Brian, why don't you start us out? How does it start?
Well, Ahasuerus is the king. Mordecai, a Jew, is one of his advisors,
Sure.
and his niece,
Yes.
Esther,
Great, yeah, niece, yeah. His uncle's daughter. First cousin?
first cousin.
Yeah.
Esther is a beautiful Jewess who is around the town, but doesn't have a particular role.
Okay, let's pause right there. That's all good. And I think the book of Esther is the only time we actually use the word Jewess in conversation. But thank you for that. Okay, tell me what comes
I
next.
want to be faithful to the
Before that, King Ahasuerus, his first wife, he was
Yes.
married
He
before.
was.
Yes,
He's
and
not
I
married.
can't remember
Well, he's not
her
married
name.
to Esther. He's just
No,
set
no,
the scene.
but the scene was he was first with this
Vashti.
wife, Vashti. And what
Queen
he
Vashti.
did was he'd have these grand parties.
He sure did.
And he'd parade her around naked. He'd make her be naked and parade her around, to show her off.
He was a bit of a cad. Okay,
And
Richard
he-
says this is not in the original text.
That's right.
It's not in the original
I
text.
thought that was the
It
original.
is in,
No.
no, he just asked her to show up and dance in her diadem.
No, he doesn't ask her to dance.
He comes
just
her,
asked
he
her to
asks her to
show
come and show up in her
In her
diadem.
diadem.
All he does is he asks her to come out in a crown. That's
Yes.
all he asks her to do.
This
Right,
poor
he
man
doesn't
has
say
been
where's the
maligned
wine.
all these centuries. Richard wants us to know.
It's criminal.
Okay, the rabbis are quite sure that he did something lewd, even if Richard doesn't agree with it. So, we have the text, we have what our tradition thinks, and we have whatever, we want to make up about this story since it's so much fun. Okay, so that's good. We have a Queen Vashti. She didn't do something that King Ahasuerus wanted her to do. And then what?
I thought she left.
No, she never came.
And the next day, the king's ministers are sitting around talking to the king.
This is Richard's favorite part. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they say, if you don't punish her for not coming out, none of our wives are going to listen to us either.
It will be a revolt of women across the Persia and Medea.
Yes.
She had the nerve to say no.
Because she had the nerve to say no. How dare she?
So they convinced him to either kill her or banish her, whichever you.
Okay,
choose
if we're
to believe.
sticking with the text,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
they
pushed her
advised
away.
her to never see her again, never allow Vashti to come before him again. So, there's also a midrash about, they serve him up her head on a silver platter.
Oh.
That's a good one. There's another midrash where she's like, oh, whatever. Okay, she was a queen of another king, and there was all this intrigue. Okay, but really, the text just says, just don't let her be your queen anymore and pick somebody more suited for the job. Okay? All right, what's next?
How else would
Esther
you choose?
gets taken.
How else would you choose? Yes, how would you choose, Dabira?
A beauty contest.
A
of course.
beauty contest. Yes. Well, at least the counselors suggest that they round up all the beautiful maidens or virgins, depending on the way you translate that word. It could go either way. In the 127 provinces. Okay. So then what happens?
Esther becomes part of the court.
Yes, Esther gets scooped up in this mass scooping up of pretty maidens or virgins. Okay, and she ends up being taken to the palace.
Right.
Okay, and while all this is happening, then what?
Well, Haman on the side.
Who is Haman? Thank you. Who is this guy?
He is a high-ranking minister, but I don't remember.
He's a high-ranking minister, and so one midrash is that Mordecai was actually in the same sort of counseling department as Haman, right, in the beginning of the story. And then all of a sudden, Haman is promoted to, we could say Grand Vizier, we could say Viceroy, I don't even know how to pronounce that. And then what happens?
Well, and then he decides that
They should bow down before him.
Right,
oh,
right, this is
that's
the
comes
bowing
before-
part.
Okay.
Yes, this is why I bring my husband to services. Thank
Well,
you, honey.
we've gotten this far without him.
I know. He's doing pretty good. He waited until he was needed and then jumped in. So apparently, Haman expected everyone to bow to him, but
Well, there's these stiff-necked folks around.
stiff-necked folks around.
Where's my grogger? Where was
Come back tomorrow night,
That's what
Bernie.
Cole
You'll
just
have a
did.
grogger aplenty. So
Cohn just gave us a grogger. That's just what he was doing.
who didn't bow?
Mordecai.
Mordecai, not all the Jews, not all these stiff-necked people,
Right.
just this guy, Mordecai. And, the other people in charge would go to Mordecai and say, you really should bow. And they went back to him a couple of times and they said, you really should bow. And he was like, I do not bow because I am a Jew. I would just like for everyone to know in this room that there is no Jewish law that says you cannot bow to a monarch. Okay, that's very important. Right. The turning point of this narrative is that Mordecai believes he can't bow to Haman because he is a Jew. But that is nowhere in the halakha. Okay, so just hold on to that for a minute. So, finally, those policemen or whatever go to Haman and they say he's not bowing to you. And then what happens between Haman and Mordecai?
Haman plots against all the Jews.
Yes, but how odd is that, Richard, being that only one Jew offended him?
He may have had some other issues.
I think that's clear, yes. So, because one person who happens to be a Jew offended Haman mortally, he decides to kill all the Jews. But what does he have to do? Like, whose go-ahead does he need in order to, achieve this goal?
Ahasuerus.
King Ahasuerus. Now, does anyone remember how he goes about convincing King Ahasuerus? Was King Ahasuerus just like, oh yeah, kill whoever you want? Or was there like a little bit more?
No, there's a plot. There's a plot against the king. Where he tells Ahasuerus that there's a plot against the king. That he's going to save the king from.
Close, really close. That's a little bit in a minute. That's in a minute. So basically,
He calls Haman in because he was sleeping and couldn't sleep and said, come in and tell me.
oh, you guys are jumping the gun. So the reason that we're doing this is because I want you to know that in the actual text of Megillat Esther, Haman comes to King Ahasuerus and says, there is a certain people in your land, and they have their own rules, and they don't follow your laws, the king's laws. So I need your permission to destroy them. And as a show of good faith, I'm going to give you 10,000 talents of gold to put in your coffers to show you how supportive I am of you. And King Ahasuerus says, okay.
Good
Yes, you're
deal.
fine.
Good deal.
Yeah,
I don't remember he gave him money.
he sure did.
Ah.
See, I want you guys to be thinking about this because it's super weird. We like to think of King Ahasuerus as being like one of the good guys, but yeah, Mary's like, no, he was always a weasel.
No, he didn't ask
Oh, he did not ask.
Isn't that
who
bribery?
this people was who were plotting against him.
Yeah, he asked nothing. Okay, so King Ahasuerus decides he'd rather drink than care about what entire people is getting destroyed because Haman it must be true. So that happens, and why do we call it Purim?
Drawing of the lots.
Yes, they're gonna draw lots. Why are they drawing lots? What is the lots for? What is going on with these lots?
Who's drawing lots?
Why does Purim mean lots? Thank you, Mary, for asking this question. So, Haman decides that he wants to kill all the Jews, but he's got to know the right day. So, he decides to cast lots, which is sort of like rolling dice, but with sticks or whatever. So, he decides to cast lots, and the day falls on the 13th of Adar, and that is why Purim is on the 13th of Adar. Okay, so now we get to the part that Richard and Mark we're talking about, okay? While all this is happening, Mordecai is like skulking around in the gates, and he overhears two guards called Bigthan and Teresh, and they are courtiers, and they are plotting to murder the king. And so Mordecai makes sure that he tells Esther, who has since become the queen, we kind of skipped that part, who has since become the queen, and tells her to, he reports it, okay? And it gets written down in the book of Chronicles, okay? And the king's life is saved, okay? Then, ... what happens next?
Well, somewhere the word goes out to all 125 provinces that they're free to kill the Jews on to the 14th of Nisan.
That is very true. And then King Ahasuerus cannot sleep at night. And instead of taking more milk, he decides that he is going to ask his ministers to read him the book of Chronicles. And what is he reminded about? He's reminded that Mordecai saved his life. Was he ever rewarded for this? He asks.
Nope.
His people say no. And at that exact moment, Haman comes into the court and he's about to ask for, more murder or something. And King Ahasuerus says, so, how would you honor a person that you wanted to honor? And of course, Haman thought that he was referring to himself. So he said, dress him in your garb, put him in your crown, put him on your horse, and have someone parade him around the city saying, this is what happens to a man whom the king wishes to honor. And then, of course, King Ahasuerus tells Haman that Mordecai, he must do that to Mordecai. So he's very, very enraged. And then what happens?
Esther
Esther what?
tells him.
No, Esther invites the king and Haman to dinner.
But why does she do that? She doesn't do it on her own. She needs someone to help her.
And Mordecai guy gives her a clue.
Yeah, Mordecai is
You
like,
better save us or we're all cooked.
yeah, you're the only
Yes.
one who's in a position here to do anything about this. You
Yeah.
gotta get on it. Yeah, Linda?
At this point, do we know that Esther is Jewish? Does the king know that Esther is Jewish?
No.
No.
She has
But he
kept it a
knows-
secret all
But he
this
knows that
time.
Mordecai is Jewish.
He knows that Mordecai is Jewish, but he doesn't seem to put it together.
Well, because Haman never said, these are the people I'm gonna kill. He just said, we're gonna kill this group of people.
You were reading very finely between the lines. Very good, Linda. I have no idea. It seems to me that it was very obvious that he was Jewish because he was very publicly not bowing to this person.
Right.
But who knows all the information that gets to kings? So, Mordecai convinces Queen Esther to speak on behalf of the Jews. She invites Haman for a banquet. She invites King Ahasuerus for a banquet. She has to brave going into court without his invitation. King Ahasuerus allows her into the court without killing her. She invites them to the banquet. She invites them to another banquet, and then at the second banquet, she tells King Ahasuerus what?
That
There's
they're,
That
that
she's
there's
going to be killed
a
by
plot
this
of-
edict.
Yes.
a plot afoot to kill all the Jews.
Exactly, that
including
Haman
herself.
plotted to kill all the Jews. She herself is a Jew, and isn't there anything that he can do about it? He is enraged. He turns on Haman, but he can't. What? He can't reverse the decree that he has already decreed to kill all the people, to kill all the Jewish people on the 13th of Adar. So he has to make another decree, and the other decree says that the Jews can fight back. And then it's really bloody and it's the end. Okay. Why did we go through that?
It's porn.
In every generation, the challenge comes before us.
Thank you. In every generation, the challenge comes before us. It's sort of like Spider-Man.
Well, I mean, I thought that was also the Hanukkah story. The Maccabees
Oh, yeah.
were
They tried to kill us. They didn't.
Yeah.
Killed
Let's
them.
eat.
Let's eat, yeah.
Exactly.
We survived.
Passover, we ate.
Jill.
Clarification question.
Yes,
Where
ma'am.
does Haman's three-cornered hat fit into this story?
That is
I
an
can
excellent
remember a hat
question.
that has three corners.
Yeah.
And the hamantashen and
Yeah.
the three-corner hat.
Do you want the traditional answer or the historic answer?
Whichever one you choose to give me.
No.
Okay, that really leaves it up to me. Okay, so Haman's hat, it's supposed to be his ear actually, right? The cookies are supposed to look like an ear. I've never seen anybody with a triangular shaped ear, but it's supposed to look like his ear. And we're supposed to be
Dr.
eating his
Spock.
ear, probably because it was another rite of another group of like Ishtarian people who are prayers. It's a pagan rite basically, and we co-opted it.
Okay.
You know, like why we fried potatoes. Okay, so my closing comment before we finish up our service is that this holiday, I keep saying, is strangely considered to be a children's holiday, right? And I just want to say again and again and again how this is a story about really terrible anti-Semitism and genocidal intent that is we're only saved by this sort of random serendipity, right, of Esther happening to be so beautiful and being placed in the right place at the right time and being able to find the courage with Mordecai's help to speak to the king, right? So when we're celebrating Purim tomorrow, I want us to be thinking about how it is that we can most manifest the awareness that we are seeing in Purim. Meaning the awareness that the time that we find ourselves in right now is ludicrous. What is happening in our world right now is incomprehensible, right? We feel wobbly. We're not quite sure how we can feel confident. And we get to make fun of it tomorrow night, that instability and that insecurity. We get to make fun of it while knowing that it's a dangerous and terrible thing. And that, I think, is one of the great gifts of Judaism, to be able to laugh at suffering. So let's do that tomorrow night. Shabbat Shalom. Oh, Ron.
Quick question, what are the costumes and all that?
Oh, the revelry. Yeah, I mean, it's just to make fun of
Just
our
to make
suffering,
fun of the
everything. It's just to
celebration.
be able to poke fun at the hardest things to think about. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.